Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to give you my more or less final verdict on the George Harrison 50th edition. I have only picked up physically the 3 CD edition, which comes in this nice box with the replication poster and 1 CD of extras. So the rest of the extras I'll have to continue to listen to on Spotify. A minor gripe with this package is that the Apple Jam has been incorporated into the first 2 discs, and then the 3rd disc with the bonus tracks is actually called Apple Jam with an identical cover to the original Apple Jam, and that's a bit confusing. But I know George did the same on here. He put the Apple Jam on, incorporated them into 2 discs, I guess for cost reasons, but I would hate people to get the impression that I know there's a guy who keeps on commenting, defending the Apple Jam, and I fully respect your opinion, and you say it's like criticizing it is like criticizing the last 5 tracks from Wings of America. So okay, it's only my opinion, but I think the first 4 sides are significantly superior to the Apple Jam, and I think it should be packaged as such, but that's only a minor gripe. I really enjoyed the outtakes, listening to it on the full stereo as opposed to Spotify. I think the outtakes are the highlight of the set. So, but I must say the original album, I've been trying to compare and contrast all the various versions I've got. This is the version I first acquired in the late 70s, UK Apple, and then I had the original dual case CD, which I no longer have. I gave it to a friend when I picked up this in 2000, which was George Harrison's personally supervised remix stroke remaster of this classic album with the very amusing front cover, it colorized and with the buildings in the background culminating in this flyover here, which I thought that was a nice touch. And sleeve notes from George himself in this edition, and talking about how he wanted to remix it, and he has remixed it to some extent here, which makes all subsequent remixes arguably a bit redundant. So there have been a couple since then. We've had the I think there was a 40th anniversary, which I didn't pick up, and the 2014 CD version. I was noticing Paul Hicks is involved in this one as well. So I'm not sure why they need to do another one, but obviously for the 50th they had another crack, and I've been listening to the 3 CD versions, and I even put on my vinyl just to see if it was as, if the sound would, and I don't think I have a good enough record player to pick up vinyl in proper quality, so unfortunately, unlike you, Paul, or these other hi-fi bods out there who had this amazing system, I don't think my hi-fi does justice. I end up having to crank up the vinyl pretty loud and turn up the bass to get the same kind of listening experience as a CD, particularly on the older vinyl. Maybe some of the newer ones would be different, but I don't have them. So I've been trying to see whether this mix is any better, and I think my first reaction was there's a couple of things I like, such as the clarity. I can hear things a bit clearer, and the guitar solo on Wah Wah has been increased in volume, which is a highlight for me. But then there's other things which annoy me a bit, like the Ringo's bass drum entry on Isn't It a Pity, the big boom when it goes into the heavens with the drums, and that's been muffled or reduced in volume. I'm pretty sure my ears aren't deceiving me, which is a big highlight of the song. So I think I'll try and persevere with this for a few more listens, but I think I'm going to end up going back to either this one or indeed this one, because I was listening to this the other day and it's pretty amazing. And I can't, maybe I don't have a good enough CD player to tell the difference, but I don't think, there's too much difference between the 3. I get the criticism of this one. Apparently the vinyl sounds substandard. On the CD it sounds fine to me, just with those minor criticisms. The vocals have been raised a bit, and the drums and the bass have been brought up in volume, and somehow the other instruments have got a little bit lost. Not on all the tracks, some of the softer tracks it works quite well, but for example, on Wah Wah, I think a lot of us were expecting, okay, what would it have sounded like without the so-called wall of sound? And we don't really get that. We get the wall of sound, but in a more muffled sense, with George's vocal brought up in the mix. And as a couple of people pointed out, bringing George's vocal up in volume, yes, it makes him more audible, but it also exposes his slightly weak voice when he reaches for the high notes, and that's a great voice, and it did improve over the years. But I think one of the reasons Spector didn't mix it too high is because, you know, he does struggle a bit to hit the notes, and that was noticeable on the outtake of Wah Wah, take one, where he hasn't got the backing vocalists backing him when he's singing the original Wah Wah chorus. It's just George on the vocal, and he seems pretty exposed. So anyway, it's still very enjoyable to hear those demos. As I say, those are the highlights, especially the session outtakes, you know, the extended version of Hear Me Lord, the demo, the extended outtake of I'd Have You Anytime, the outtake of Beware of Darkness with a slightly tentative solo in the middle, just being worked out, and I'm not even sure, played by George, sounds more like Eric maybe having a run through. By the way, I know someone said I should be able to tell the difference between a George Harrison and Eric Clapton guitar solo, but you know, I think I can for the obvious ones when it's a slide guitar, but if it's kind of not quite slide, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. And it would have been nice to have had detailed sleeve notes on who plays what on each track, which is going to be my next point actually. As I go, if I had to rank this 50th anniversary, I think the remix of the original album is hit and miss at best, probably mostly miss, because I'm going to end up going back to the previous versions, I think. The outtakes are a joy, and they're the highlight of the whole release, and they're available on Spotify if you don't want to spend any money, and it's great value for money because Spotify is, you pay a monthly sub and you get all this stuff more or less for free, so no complaints there. Where I do have the complaints is on the pricing of, not particularly the package I bought, but the 5 CD with the Blu-ray is a lot more expensive, 110 quid I think, $150, and I'm not sure if I can speak for many, but a lot of us don't really need the Blu-ray or don't have the facility to play 5.1 surround sound, so we just appreciate having the 5 CDs, and you have to jump from £25 for the 3 CD set to £110 for the 5 CD just because you've got the Blu-ray included, and somehow the pricing is out of whack there. The Uber Deluxe box set I think is frankly ridiculous, a bit of a sick joke putting that one out so that, and pricing it beyond most normal people. The other gripe I've got, apart from the pricing, is the research that could have happened for a big release like this. If they're going to charge money for you to buy this album for what would me if you include my two sons' copies, I think it's the 6th or 7th version of this album that I have bought. And for a 50th, one expects a little more in terms of research and to speak to the people who are still with us. For example, on the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, they interviewed Richard Lush, Phil McDonald, Klaus, Ringo, and the people who were there. Yoko, obviously John no longer with us, but some archive interview from him. In this version, this 50th, I think there's a discussion between Dhani and Paul Hicks. And I can't, well, certainly in this edition, there's no other people contributing. Maybe in the deluxe edition, a couple of people have been asked, but I think it's fair to say for the most part, people like Ken Scott, Phil McDonald, the engineers, they could have been interviewed. John Barham, who did all the string arrangements, could have been interviewed, not to mention the many musicians who are still with us, who we've talked about previously. So that's disappointing. And the other subject I want to talk about is how certain quarters have not taken well to people criticising this release and putting out videos or statements saying they don't like it, and the reaction to that has been a little bit disappointing, and I'm not really supposed to talk about this topic. It's quite a sensitive topic for certain people involved, so I'm not going to mention names. But all I would say is I think it's important to respect people's freedom of expression, and whether you agree with it or not is almost irrelevant. Everyone has an opinion, or is allowed an opinion, and I'm reminded of a quote from one of my heroes, Winston Churchill, who said for some people's idea of free speech is that they are free to say what they like, but if anyone else says anything back, that is an outrage. And that's a little bit of what we've been getting recently from certain people. As I say, I'm not going to go into names, but this was the 50th anniversary of All Things Must Pass. Great to have it on this CD, but more importantly, I will stick to my original versions. Got several of them, slightly different packaging, slightly different sound, and don't have the Japanese copy, Paul, so I'd be interested to hear that one day if I can get hold of it. And I would always on the lookout for a US copy with the completed disc 1, or maybe there's a stray disc 1 in the universe somewhere which used to belong in this album, and I wouldn't mind getting my hands on it. But I guess I'll probably have to buy a full copy. But I would like to have a full US copy just for completeness' sake. So that was it. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.